Hey everyone, I think we're live. I'm having a hard time with Facebook today, and it's very complicated, and I think I'm going to change how I do this in the future. I've been checking out Twitch. I've been watching streamers on Twitch for like years now, so I think in the future I'm going to do one more Facebook Live, and then I think I'm just going to move everything to Twitch because I think it's going to be a lot easier on me. But anyways, I hope you all can hear me. I hope you're all doing well. My name is Axel, if you don't know who I am, from Get Speaking English. And I need to change the screen. Gosh, it's been a long time since I've done this. Okay, there we go. Now you can see me now. Terrible. Anyways, right, so my name is Axel from Get Speaking English. Thank you all for being here today. If you don't check out this lesson live, you'll be able to check it out on YouTube afterwards. I will share everything there and also upload our notes as well. So if this is your first time being here with me, and it's just gonna get stuff set up here a little bit. All right, perfect. Yeah, if this is your first time being here with me, this is how this is gonna work, because we're going to go through the lesson together. I will obviously put in some input in terms of answers, vocabulary, things like that, but you're also welcome to contribute if you're here. So feel free to send your comments in the chat. I will see them. We'll be able to add your comments to the notes, and so feel free to put out your ideas, and we can work together and come up with a lot of really valuable information that we can all learn from at the end. All right, so I'm just gonna give it a minute to see if anybody's gonna will show up. I'm just fixing the Facebook dashboard. There's so many buttons and there's so many options that I have a really hard time dealing with it, so. But that's fine. And specifically for today, we are going to be focusing on part 1, speaking of the B2 first and the C1 advanced, but also just getting some vocabulary for talking about animals and related topics. Yeah, so as I mentioned, this lesson is going to be specifically geared towards students looking to prepare for the B2 first exam or C1 advanced Cambridge exams. However, a lot of this vocabulary, a lot of these phrases we'll be learning will also be helpful for other exams. So for the IELTS exam, for example, TOEFL exam, also just general English exams, or for anybody who's looking to speak English at an upper intermediate to an advanced level, since we'll be looking at lots of useful language that you could use in everyday life. Yeah, so this is what we're going to do, is we're going to go through my presentation, through my slides. We're going to first start by brainstorming just some related topics that might come up with animals, because I know that, you know, we think about animals, we think about creatures, right? But there's lots of other subcategories that come up when talking about animals. We're also going to talk a bit about pets today and the things that are required to do to keep pets. We'll also look at some part 1 style questions from the speaking paper, the B2 first or the C1 advanced exam, and we will put together some model answers come up with some examples. And then we're also going to, again, going back to vocabulary, we're going to describe some animals. And then afterwards, as usual, I will always share the notes as a PDF. They'll be in the description with the YouTube video, and then also I will share this information on Discord as well, and we'll have everything there. So, again, just as I said earlier, this is an interactive, this could be an interactive experience, so feel free to shout out your ideas, feel free to comment in the chat, and collectively we will brainstorm and put together a lot of really great information all about this topic. All right. So just thinking in general, again, what subtopics might come up when talking about animals? So other topics, basically, that might follow under the umbrella of animals. What might come up when we're having these discussions. And I have some ideas as well. Again, feel free to put your ideas in the chat. But the first thing that comes to my mind is usually their habitats, right? So the habitat, an animal's habitat, that refers to where they live. And there are a few different types of habitats. Obviously, we have animals that live on the land, so they would live in a terrestrial habitat. So terrestrial has to do with the land. Maybe also there are marine animals as well. So marine has to do with, you know, the ocean, for example. But we could also say they live in aquatic habitats. And anything aquatic, that has to do with water, And water in general, so both freshwater, that's like lakes and ponds, no salt in this water, or salt water, which would refer to oceans, for example. Oceans have a lot of salt in it, and so that's the difference. Yeah, so aquatic habitat could refer to both saltwater and freshwater habitats, and marine typically has more to do specifically with oceans. But yeah, so we might be able to say that. Also, in the air, right? In the sky, right? So we may also think of animals living in like an aerial habitat. Anything aerial has to do with the skies, right? So birds, typically, they would live maybe in more of an aerial habitat. But I think these are probably the biggest. The aquatic and the terrestrial habitat. And you might hear aerial coming up as well. But yeah. Also, potentially, adaptations might come up. So, anybody have an idea as to what an adaptation is? What does it mean to adapt to something? Feel free to add your ideas in the chat. If we want to adapt to something, what are we gonna do? We adapt to something, we change some way to better fit the current situation, right? So an adaptation has to do with how animals have changed, have changed and evolved over time to adapt to their environments, right? So evolve has to do with that evolution, the changes over time. So for example, how some animals have evolved to have wings, right? To fly. Some that live in the polar regions, in the very cold regions, have developed really thick fur, maybe they have more body fat, for example. Those are examples of adaptations that we might use to survive really, really harsh winters, right? Harsh winters, and something harsh means really very severe here. Yeah, so I don't know if I would use the word accustom here, but animals definitely have habits. They have maybe they have habits, or they have, you know, particular behaviors. And they may also adapt their behaviors as well. That could be considered an adaptation. They would change how they react, how they live, to better be able to suit their environments, right? But that could be something. Another word that often comes up as well too when we're talking about animals is actually this word. Biodiversity. So biodiversity. So we can see here we have this prefix. Bio refers to living creatures, right? To do with living creatures. And then we have this word here. Diversity, which refers to if something's diverse. We're talking about many different types of something, right? So biodiversity has to do with all the different types of plants and animals, living organisms that live in a area. So, and areas with rich biodiversity tend to survive better over time. So it's really important to have lots of animals, plants and animals living together in a specific space. But yeah, that will come up. So biodiversity, all the various plants and animals that live in a space. So that's another very common word that comes up when we're talking about animals. Also, you know, we have animals that live in the wild, right? So we have wild animals, ones that live in forests, for example, and sort of natural habitats. So forests and natural habitats, but also domestic animals. And domestic animals, so something domesticated, that is something that now lives with people, basically. So anything domesticated is maybe can be a pet, for example. That's an example of a domestic animal, but also animals that we might use for farming, things like that. So animals that have now been sort of adapted to live with humans and human environments. So that might come up as well, right? So talking about domestic animals versus wild animals that are not able to be trained, able to be kept as pets. So that might come up as well. Any other ideas? Again, feel free to put your ideas in the chat. One other big one that I think comes up a lot is this one, conservation. So conservation. So you might see the word in here to conserve. And what does it mean to conserve something? If we conserve something, that means that we are saving something. So to conserve something means to save something. It often means to save it for later. So, example, we put food in the fridge to conserve it for later. You know, the food lasts longer in the fridge. It doesn't go bad as fat, so we can conserve it so we can use it for later. So conservation is this idea of basically saving animals, making sure that they don't go extinct, they don't die off, that we protect them. So protecting animals, basically. So, and under that, we might talk about, you know, saving their habitats, so conserving their habitats. Maybe also conservation strategies, right? Efforts. And maybe just discussing, you know, the impact of humans on, or human activities on animals, right? So our activities obviously have a huge impact on animals, their habitats, and whether or not they're able to survive long term, right? And I see farm animals coming up in the chat. Thank you, Irina. So another example of a domestic animal, exactly, farm animals will come up as well, exactly. So lots of different things, yeah. So going back to pets, going back to domestic animals, here are some animals that people might keep as pets. And let's talk about what might be challenging about keeping these animals as pets. So I have here large dog, an alligator, we'll look at that for a second, a pony, and a parrot. So let's think really quickly. First, let's brainstorm about what might be challenging about keeping a very large dog as a pet. And I love this picture, by the way. I love how big this dog is. But let's talk about challenges. So challenges about keeping a very large dog. So what do you guys think might be challenging about keeping a very large dog? I mean, obviously it would require a lot of space, right? Right? You would maybe need a very, very large yard, right? You're not sure what a yard is. That is the outside, the green, the grassy area outside a house. And I should get you a picture. So let's see, a house with a yard. Let's see what comes up. Images here. So you see here sort of a typical sort of Western style house, and we have all this grass here. So this would be the yard. So you might want to have a really big yard to keep your very big dog. So it would be hard to keep a very big dog in a city, right? Whereas if you had a house with a lot of space, that would be a bit better. Any other thoughts about what might be challenging about keeping a large dog? You know, they probably need a lot of exercise, right? I mean, even small dogs require a lot of exercise. You might have to walk it, right? So we would say to take it for a walk, so take a dog for a walk. So you might need to walk it. You might need to play games with it. A really common game is where you throw the ball, right? We call that fetch. So you might play fetch with your dog. Your fog with your dog, which means to throw the ball. So you would throw it. the dog would fetch it, the dog would get it and bring it back to you. So to fetch something means to go get something. So there might be that. Also training. Training might come up. You'll have to train your dog. And training means to teach your animal how to behave. So teach your animal. Because obviously you don't want your animal to misbehave. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so somebody's saying a spacious yard. Exactly. Spacious yard. Exactly. That's perfect. Right. Spacious, something with a lot of space. So that's perfect. Exactly. A spacious yard, maybe a spacious house. Lots of places where it can get exercise. And training. Yeah, you might want to teach the dog how to behave. And some common things you might train an animal to do is like you might train your dog to sit, for example, or to roll over. So that's when it lays down and you get it to flip over. So to roll over, you might train it to roll over. Maybe also to beg, for example. Well, maybe not to beg. You would probably train it to not beg. But if it begs for something, it's kind of asks for food. Almost. Maybe that's not a good training behavior. But to stay, you would train it to stay. So where it would stay in one place and you would go away. So there could potentially be that. How about, let's talk about a pony. So pony is essentially a small horse. And we can see a pony here. And what might be challenging about keeping a pony? I think, again, the space issue might come up, right? Again, you would want a very spacious yard, a spacious field to keep it in, right? What else might be challenging about keeping a pony? I think it would be hard to take care of. You would have to consider, the care and maintenance. So maintenance here has to do with, keeping the animal, healthy. You'd have to groom it. You'd have to groom your dog as well, but also your pony. If you groom something, that would be like, you brush the fur, for example. Brush the fur. Or you might trim the hooves. So trim the hooves. And that means to basically kind of cut the not cut off the hooves, but to make sure that they stay at a reasonable length. And the hooves are the foot of the animal. So you can't really see them here, but horses have hooves, we might say. Yeah, I see. So David is commenting about the food. Yes, food. And I think it would be really expensive too, probably. I hear that feeding horses and feeding ponies and similar animals are actually quite expensive. Yeah, so you would have to get specialized food, right? So that would definitely be something. Yeah, and you would have to have very specialized knowledge as well, right? So like David was saying, you need knowledge about how to feed them and take care of them, right? So I think, yeah, that would be very, very particular, right? So a lot of things to consider when taking care of a pony. And how about a parrot? So parrot, So parrot is a very, well, we can see one here, but kind of a large bird. They're usually really colorful. They're very intelligent, and they can live for a very long time. So you have to consider that they have a long lifespan. But what else might be really challenging about keeping a parrot? Maybe given that they are so intelligent, you would have to give them a lot of interaction. So, intelligent. So you need to interact with them a lot. You would need to give them mental stimulation. So if you stimulate something, you sort of give it something that triggers it to make something else happen. So we talk about mental, if you feel mentally stimulated, you're thinking about things and you're actively thinking, you're kind of engaged with what you're doing, just your mind is very active, right? So we would have to keep it active. You would have to keep the parrot active because it's so intelligent, and that would be important for keeping it very healthy and happy, right? Also lots, like we said, like lots of social interactions. So you would have to interact with it, meaning, you know, talk to it, play with it, things like that to keep it happy and healthy as well. I think they'd also be really noisy, right? They're very talkative, right? You know, they can be very talkative. So that's a consideration as well, right? Talkative, or they might chirp. They chirp a lot. So we say that animals chirp, and parrots also squawk as well too. Which is when they're like, wah, I'm not gonna do it. But yeah, we would say that parrots squawk, birds chirp when they're like peep, peep, peep. Yeah, so lots of noises. So many things to consider having a parrot. And finally, an alligator. So I'm not recommending keeping an alligator, but it's a reptile, right? And some people try to keep alligators. But what would be challenging about keeping an alligator? I mean, again, like, you would probably have to have very, very specialized knowledge, right? Their diet is extremely specialized as well. So anything specialized, that's very specific to the animal, right? It would eat a lot of raw meat and things like that, right? And something raw is not cooked, right? And also just space, you know, space considerations, right? And I think safety as well too, because I don't think that they can be very dangerous, right? And I don't think they are easily trained whatsoever. Exactly. Yeah, so now that we have a lot of great great vocabulary, let's talk a little bit just about speaking part one. So part one of the B2 first, the C1 advanced exam, is essentially an interview. So during the exam, as you probably already know, you'll be working with a partner, but at this point in the exam, you're only talking to the examiner, so there is no interaction with the other candidate in the room. And the examiner is going to ask you some questions, and they're basically just questions about you. They're sort of designed to help you warm up a bit. So they're essentially going to be about you, your experiences, your opinions. So nothing too complicated. And we're just looking to respond for maybe about 10, 15 seconds. You don't have a lot of time to respond, but I typically recommend at least saying, you know, respond to the question directly. And then I always add a reason for what you said. We always want to expand on what we're saying, basically. So respond directly at least, and then maybe add something a little bit extra. So I'm going to ask you guys maybe some questions that might be asked, and then we'll look at a couple together. But what questions might be asked? So again, questions that are going to be about you, your experiences and opinions, and maybe that deal with the topic of animals. And I could think of a couple really basic ones, and basic ones that we could practice with while speaking. For example, you know, what is your favorite animal? I mean, I think that would be kind of an obvious one. Or maybe, you know, do you have any pets, maybe? Or do you know anyone who has a pet? You know, they often ask a series of questions using different tenses. So something that has to do with like the present tense. So what is your favorite animal? But they might also change it to talk about the past, right? So maybe, for example, you know, what was your favorite animal when you were a child, right? And then when we answered this question, we would have to use past tense, right? So they would be testing our knowledge of past tense with this question, right? Or for example, you know, if you could get a new pet, what would you get? Here, a question using conditional phrases, right? So if you could do something, what would you do? Maybe, you know, have you visited any zoos lately? Or do you like visiting zoos? So, you know, again, things just basically about our experiences. These sort of questions probably a bit more appropriate for the B2 group. They get a little bit more challenging for C1 advanced, obviously. The questions might be more about your opinion, about your culture, society, country, and things like that. More sort of complicated questions, maybe, for example, are you concerned about, I don't know, animal welfare, for example, or, you know, are people in your country fond of animals? Do they like animals? Is that what it means to be fond of something? Be fond of something. To like something. It's a fancy way to say to like something. Yeah, so lots of different questions we can ask about animals and just our personal experiences, right? So let's look at a couple together. Let's generate a few sort of model answers here. So what kind of animals do people keep as pets in your country? So what kind of animals do people keep as pets in your country? And feel free to add an answer in the chat. I have thought about a few as well. So if you don't know, I'm here. I live in Canada. So here in Canada. Dogs are very common. They are a common pet because there's a lot of land here. It's very spacious, right? So we have a lot of space, we have a lot of land, so it's very common for people to have animals, for people to have dogs here. Many of the houses, at least in the rural, so the country areas, many of the houses have big yards and enough space for dogs to run in, right? So that could be something, right? And if we had some time, maybe not so much for B2 first, C1 advanced, but if we were doing IELTS, for example, where we had more time to talk, we could expand on this a little bit more as well. Because here in Canada, you know, it's also common for people to have dogs on farms here. And like, in, you know, Canada, we have a lot of farms. So Canada has many farms. So you see a lot of dogs, you know? But yeah, so we can see here, we always want to, you know, say something and just add a little bit more. So answer the question directly, maybe add another little detail. And that's really about, that's really all the time you have. You don't have a lot of time in this part to really say really long answers. But yeah, so very common. So see them all the time. Yeah, because a lot of the houses have very big yards. That's a great word. They have a lot of space for the dogs to run in. You know, a common city pet here as well. So in the city, let's talk about cities now. So in the cities, you know, a lot of people have cats, right? And they have cats because they are very quiet, right? And make great indoor companions. So if you don't know what a companion is kind of is something that keeps you company. So it's with you, it stays by you. So, and a companion could also be a friend, for example. We could call, you know, them a companion as well. But yeah, cats, dogs, those are great companions. Right. So they're really quiet, and they make great indoor companions. And most people live in apartments with limited space. But cats, you know, cats don't need to go outside, so they are perfect. And a lot of cats like to be inside, right? So, you know, we can train them, right? They are easily trained, which means we can teach them to, you know, go to the bathroom inside and things like that. We say like to use the litter box. That's that little box that they would use with like the stuff in it. Yes, exactly, right. Irina's also saying, we don't need to take cats for walks. Exactly, yes, exactly. They don't require walking, right? We don't need to take them for walks. Exactly, right, yeah. So we don't need to exercise them like we would a dog, right? So it's completely different. Yeah. Let's talk about another one. Let's talk about what our favorite animal was when we were a child. So what was your favorite animal when you were a child? So actually, what was your favorite animal when you were a child? So maybe we did have a favorite animal, and feel free to put your favorite animal in the chat if you had one as a child. I know when I was a child, and again, we see we're using simple past here. So when I was a child, I was obsessed with horses. And if you're obsessed with something, you like it a lot, like to a very extreme amount. Yeah, so when I was a child, I was obsessed with horses, right? And again, so just expanding on that answer, maybe, you know, I thought they were beautiful and there were a lot of farms near where I grew up. So I saw them a lot. Now you notice here that I've been very careful to use all of these past verbs, and I know these are all pretty much all irregular verbs except for this one. But it's really important when we get a question about the past, when we are talking about the past, that we keep talking in the past in our answer. So we don't want to be mixing past and present, that sort of thing. I hear that a lot, but we typically want to, if we're talking about the past and it's over, it's done with, we want to put everything in the past and make that clear. So there could be that. You know, another thing too. So what was your favorite animal when you were a child? Maybe you didn't have a favorite animal. You know, sometimes we get questions on these exams and we either, it doesn't appeal to us, it's not part of our lives, it's not relevant in some way. And we can always just say that that didn't apply to me, right? Like we can always just say that something wasn't part of your life. The idea is that whatever question you get, you're going to want to respond to it and talk about that question. But if you didn't have an animal, like if you didn't have a favorite animal, you could say that. So for example, you know, we could say like, actually, I didn't really have a favorite animal. You know, I was much more interested in playing sports or doing things with my friends, right? So here I'm saying that I don't have an answer. I can't really respond to this. So instead I was interested in these things, and this kind of answer is completely fine, right? It just, you know, we're still talking about, we've addressed the question, but now we are saying honestly what we preferred instead. And again, you see I'm still using those past tenses, so that's really important. But yeah, we can definitely say if something was not really part of our lives or whatever. Yeah, and we can add a little bit more on this as well, you know, like I don't mind animals, but honestly, I don't really think much about them. Like we could say that. And if we don't mind something, that means that it doesn't bother us. So if something doesn't, or so if we don't mind something, it doesn't bother us. Like we're okay with it. We don't hate them, but we also don't love them. So we're kind of indifferent, right? That's basically what it means. Like I don't mind animals, they're okay, but they're not really my thing. and we can say that, right? Yeah, so that's fine. Ah, fantastic. Yeah, so Irina had a fantastic big tomcat, which was really great. And tomcat's a great word. Yeah, so tomcat, a tomcat. It's like a male cat. And they're kind of like the big ones. So that's really fantastic. Exactly. Yeah, so that would be really great. Yeah. Let's look at one other final little question. Let's talk about cities for a second. So, do you think cities are suitable places for keeping pets? So if something is suitable, it means, you know, are they good places for keeping pets? And again, we can say yes or we can say no. We're gonna express our opinion on this. You know, maybe you do think they are, right? So, you know, do you think cities are suitable places for keeping pets? Sure. Why not? Sure. You know, cities are great because there are a lot of pet-friendly spaces. So something pet-friendly, that means pet-friendly. That means that there's places where animals can be. They're not a problem. You know, they like animals, and animals can be there without a problem. So, for example, here some stores are pet friendly. You can bring your animals while you go shopping, things like that. Yeah, because there are a lot of pet friendly spaces like dog parks, for example, where you can exercise your animals. And a dog park is a place where you can take your dog, and it's enclosed. It has a fence around it. Fence around it. And it's enclosed. And you can let your dog run off leash, we would say. The leash is that thing that goes on their neck. It's like the kind of like the rope that goes onto the collar around the neck. But yeah, we used to say they can go off leash, we would say. Off leash, so no leash. They can run free. So that could be something. Yeah, so lots of pet-friendly spaces like dog parks, where you can exercise your animals. You know, there's also groomers, right? So the groomers, a place to get your dog bathed, haircut, right? A bath and haircut, right? Yeah, exactly. They could run freely. Exactly. They can run freely. Where you can exercise your animals and let them run freely. Let's add that. Yes. Exactly. So there are groomers and pet shops. Places to get veterinary care. Veterinary care. So there are lots of facilities. Yeah, so the veterinary is basically an animal doctor. So veterinary care just refers to care for, like, medical care for animals, right? Yeah. Yeah, so there could be that. we could also not be in agreement, which I think is also a common stance, right? Yeah. So we could say, no, I don't agree. And I don't agree. We don't say, I am not agree, or I not agree. I hear that sometimes, but this is incorrect. We don't want to say that. So no, I don't agree. You know, cities are not ideal due to the limited space. So if something is limited, if there is limited space, there's only so much space. There's not a lot of space. So something limited, yeah, limited space. There's not a lot of space. That's what that means. Yeah, so there could be that. And cities are also very polluted, right? So lots of pollution, lots of polluted, and there's a lot of noise. So, and animals may get scared by the noises, right? So lots of considerations, right? When living in the city, they might get scared, as in they are afraid of it. Yeah, but those are some considerations. And Irina is saying that it can be challenging. It can be challenging to have animals, to have pets, if you have to go away for a while. Yes, right? Exactly, yeah. So definitely, you have to find, if you go away, you have to find someone to take care of your pets, right? So if you take care of something, that means you watch something. You watch it and feed it and exercise it and walk it, all those things, right? So yeah, pets can definitely be challenging, right? Exactly. So lots of things. So we're getting short on time, but that's okay. I just wanted to leave you guys with some extra vocabulary. We're just going to talk about different types of animals and maybe how to describe them. So I have some pictures of different animals in different places. Let's just look at these images and see what kind of vocabulary we can come up with. So here, obviously, what do we have? And feel free to add your ideas about these pictures as well. But we have a herd of elephants, right? So a herd, that's a group of usually plant-eating animals. For example, we would say a herd of horses, a herd of elephants, a herd of deer, usually plant-eating animals. But yeah, we have a herd of elephants, and it looks like they're in maybe an African savanna. So African savanna. You notice how I've capitalized, I was careful to capitalize this word here, African, because anytime we have every time we have an adjective that is a root word from like a country or an ethnicity, a nationality, we always want to make sure that we capitalize those letters. So yeah, so it's a herd of elephants, maybe in an African savanna, and the savannas is sort of a like an area with plains and sort of flatlands in Africa. And what else might we say about What else could we say about elephants? You know, they have... Does anybody know what this is called? Their nose. We don't call it a nose, but we have a specific name for that. They have long... So we have a very, very specific word for this. We call it a trunk. So they have long trunks. And I don't know if we can see them in this picture, but sometimes they also have the really long teeth, right? And those teeth are called tusks. So they have long trunks and large tusks. The tusks are the long teeth that elephants have, right? They also have very, very large ears, very large flappy ears. You would say that, something that flaps, large flappy ears. Essentially. Oh, we could also say large floppy ears. They're also very social animals, aren't they? They're very social. That means if something's social, they like to be around other animals. Like humans, we're all very social, right? We love to spend time with our friends, our families, be in groups of people. So anything social likes to be in the company of others. And elephants are like that as well, right? People might describe elephants as being gentle giants. So giants as in they're really big, right? But gentle as in they're not aggressive, they're kind of calm, kind of nice, not aggressive, right? So they might be described that way. Yeah, so we could potentially say that. How about this picture? So here, penguins. Penguins, and where do penguins live? They're typically in the South Pole, right? So they are, you know, they live in the Antarctic, right? Usually, but the South Pole. There you go, the South Pole. And they have wings, right? But they don't fly, right? They are, you know, flightless birds. We would say birds. So they're birds that don't fly, right? So they're flightless birds because their wings have evolved into what we would call flippers. So those things are flippers. Dolphins, for example, they have flippers as well. Whales have flippers. Seals have flippers. So those appendages used for swimming, those are flippers. Yeah. So we might say that they have flippers. They're also very social, aren't they? Right? As well. And they're kind of have adapted for living in the cold, right? So we might say that as well. You know, they have like very, very thick, a lot of body fat, right? So they can live in the cold. All right. Well, okay, I have two more pictures and then I gotta run. But this one here, maybe we might say that this is a domestic This looks like it's a domestic animal, right? Looks like it's a farm animal. And obviously we have a bunch of baby. It looks like this is a goose. I think this is a goose or a duck. Looks like a goose. Yeah, I think ducks have shorter necks, but I think this is a goose. And it has like a bunch of chicks, a brood of chicks. A chick is just like a word for a baby bird, basically. So we might say that, right? And it looks like maybe they're in, I would imagine they're probably in a farm or something like that, right? So I already said that they're a farm animal. But yeah, definitely an example of a domestic animal, right? Something that we might see. And let's look at the last one really quickly. So we have, it looks like maybe some sort of wild dog, I'm guessing. Be a wild dog. Wild dog. And it looks like, I'm gonna guess that this animal probably found this meal, right? It probably didn't hunt it. I have a funny feeling that this animal is probably a scavenger. And an animal that scavenges goes and eats food that something else has already killed. Or for example, maybe an animal just died for some reason, and then scavengers would come and they would eat that animal. So something that scavenges, eats already killed prey. We might refer to prey as being the stuff that meat eaters, that carnivores would eat. So yeah, so we might be able to say that as well. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up then, so I can get going. We can all get going. But yeah, thank you everybody so much for coming out. It was really great to have you guys here. I hope that this was helpful. As I said at the beginning of the lesson, I'm going to upload this video and all of our notes to YouTube so we can learn from this afterwards. I'm going to be having another live lesson next week. I'm going to be checking out part 2 of the B2 first and C1 advanced exams. So that will be at the same time as well here on Facebook at on Thursday at 1400 UTC. Also, if you know or if you don't know, I also have a lot of groups on Telegram. So if you're looking for more vocabulary, listening exercises, reading exercises, you can go to Telegram, check me and find information like that there. I'm also trying to start a new thing. I have a Discord server set up for the Get Speaking English community, and it's a bit quiet, but I'd like to change that because I really believe that Discord can be a really good resource for students studying. It's a lot easier for us to connect there and to talk to one another, and you can have rooms there for practicing speaking and things. So I would like to start a study group for language learners, specifically English learners, but I'm using it to practice my Italian as well. So please consider checking that out. If you go to the Discord server, and I'll leave a link in the video description below, but go to the Get Speaking English Discord server and then look under accountability. I've set up a few channels there. There's a spot where you can just check in daily, share what you're studying that day for English. You could also sort of, say a weekly plan if you have an idea of what you want to study throughout the week. And on Sundays, I'm going to host a text-based weekly wrap-up. So we could talk about how we did, if we felt like we studied enough, or talk about our accomplishments, talk about things that could have been better, and strategize for the following week. So I think that'll be really good. We can all get to know each other a little bit better, support each other, because language learning is, you know, it can be hard. It can be hard to learn a language alone, so it'll be nice if we can support one another. So consider that as well, because I think that'll be really great. All right, and now I have to run. But again, thank you everybody for coming out. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at axelgetspeakingenglish.com, and I will see you all next time. All right, bye.